Welcome to the first video of this channel. Today we will be going over the nighttime training arc of the Ashi series. And let me tell you that this arc is fantastic, so be sure to stay right till the end to see what happens to our favorite fullback, Ashito Aoi. Anyway, if you like Aoashi, then please leave a like, comment, and share this video with a friend so that I know that y'all like this video and want to see more. And with that out of the way, let's get right into it. The day after Asparian played against Kashiwa, the scores showed Asparian Youth Club at the top. Kobayakawa, the team's regular fullback, had returned and was advised not to overwork himself, despite coming back from an injury. The first players were impressed by how well he played in a Miname. Ashito felt anxious about seeing another good player. He noticed that the regulars' atmosphere had improved, and they were overflowing with confidence. He wondered how the regular 4 defenders played. Ashito continued watching them with anxiety, and Togashi and Fukuda noticed his intense focus. 3 days later, a scrimmage between the regulars and reserves was happening. As usual, the first reserve struggled to keep up with the regular players. Both Oto and Kuroda felt the gap widening quickly. They feared what might happen if Fukuda ever thought of giving up on them. Suddenly, Fukuda stopped the scrimmage. Everyone went silent as they watched him step onto the pitch. He then went to Yuma to give him some instructions. The senior players noticed that Fukuda had been actively giving direct instructions lately and often stopped the scrimmage. Surprisingly, Fukuda also gave instructions to Otomo and Kuroda, who were not even bench players. Just then, Ashito asked Togashi about the defense of the regular players. He noticed how Kobayakawa played steadily without making any flashy moves, to the point that it seemed eerie. Togashi glared at Ashito, who was still voicing his thoughts aloud, and then said he wasn't interested. Ashito was left confused as Togashi walked away silently. The scrimmage continued. The reserves team started their attack, but Akutsu was there to give instructions to Kobayakawa. Kobayakawa moved forward, but the reserves team passed the ball to the other side. He then instructed Akutsu and Shimura to move up the line. The two quickly moved, and Ashito was shocked to see a fullback commanding the defense, especially the cornerback. However, he quickly realized that a fullback can easily see the field from the flank. Yamada then stole the ball, and Akutsu told him to keep bringing it up as he moved up too. Ashito noticed that Kobayakawa didn't move at all from his spot and recalled Daigo saying that Kobayakawa could also play midfield. Suddenly, Yamada failed to score a goal. Ashito was still deep in thought as his team got the ball back. Kiriki easily stole the ball again, and the regulars started their counterattack. Yoshitsune got the ball, and Ashito tried to stop him. The ball was then passed to Yuma, who easily scored a goal. Togashi got angry, claiming that Aso's defense was weak. He told him to be more decisive. Ashito asked if his defense was really weak, and Togashi confirmed that it was. The regular players found it interesting that the reserves were fighting. At that moment, Fukuda stepped forward and called out Togashi. He then started speaking as if he knew Togashi's thoughts. He claimed their play lacked communication. He told him to set aside his unnecessary pride, as he was the closest to being demoted to Team B. The other first players were shocked. Fukuda then confronted Ashito. He claimed his decisions would also depend on communication with the cornerback. He then asked Ashito what he thought about the regular players' defense. Ashito said Kobayakawa was balancing the defense. He also noticed that Akutsu and Yamada were the offensive defenders and probably Asaran key players for the two of them to attack. Kobayakawa took care of the defensive duties. However, Ashito quickly realized that it was not only the defense that was being balanced but also the whole team. He saw that Kobayakawa was trying to erase his individuality to match Asparian's super offensive play. Ashito knew he couldn't be like him. Fukuda just smiled and looked into Ashito's eyes. Daigo then reminded Fukuda that he had been spending too much time with the substitutes lately and suggested he focus on coaching the regulars instead. The regulars waited for Fukuda's answer. Fukuda said the most important condition for a strong team was to also have strong substitutes. He reminded them that most of the opponents Asarian regulars faced in a year were reserves. If the substitutes were not strong, the regulars would become weak, and he felt responsible for the current gap between them. However, between the two groups, Fukuda asked them to keep up with the regular players, since it all depended on the reserves too. The regulars watched from afar and were curious about what the talk was about. However, Akutsu told them it had nothing to do with them. Akutsu just kept watching the desperate expressions on the reserve players' faces, especially Ashito. Fukuda continued telling them to rely on each other and solve everything as a group. They should ask someone they trust for feedback and make corrections after hearing it. He concluded that this was how football was played. Togashi and Ashito couldn't say anything. That night, Tsukishima gave some advice to the reserve players, who asked for it. Others also went to Daigo. Otomo agreed with Fukuda that they had been too reserved to ask for advice or anything. Since Fukuda bluntly told them about it, they finally had the courage to ask. On the other hand, the recent event had a negative impact on Kuroda. He kept calling himself pathetic as he realized he hadn't really done anything. He then claimed Ashito got ahead of him, even if it was because someone got injured. He acknowledged that Ashito had some qualities that he didn't, and he envied that fact. Ashito and Otomo were surprised. Kuroda decided to ask Nozomi since he was brutally honest and knew him well. He prepared himself to accept any harsh critique. Otomo said he would join. He then asked about Ashito. Ashito smiled and said he was fine. Ashito returned to the dorms alone and read the notes that Henri had taken during the match against Kashiwa. He praised her for the detailed notes, but they were too technical for him to understand. Although he had grasped the idea of turning his neck left and right, he needed someone to practice defense with. He thought of Numi, but felt it would be wrong to ask him. Numi had already sent them off from Team B, believing Ashito would do well. It had only been a month since he was promoted, and asking Numi seemed inappropriate. Although Takasugi had told him to ask away, Takasugi was a forward. The only person Ashito could think of to teach him was Akutsu, as the thought of Akutsu teaching him gave Ashito goosebumps. Togashi called him from below. Ashito got up with style and waited for Togashi to say something. To his surprise, Togashi asked Ashito to teach him football. Aso's brain lagged for a minute before he screamed in shock. He asked Togashi to clarify, holding a tablet. Togashi explained he had been watching the video of the match against Kashiwa. He asked Ashito to come down and watch it with him, because he was curious about how Ashito managed to have such a wide field of vision. Togashi wanted to know in detail what Ashito saw when he was on the pitch. Ashito looked nervous, but in the end, he sat down with Togashi. He then pointed out how the defender on him had watched the ball for a moment. He had used that chance to move forward and ask Takasugi for the ball. While explaining further, Ashito noticed that explaining things to others was also helpful for him. By doing so, he could also analyze his own movements in his own words. It was just like the TV show where players explained their own plays and were able to reorganize that information. However, he still couldn't believe that he was teaching Togashi. He wondered why Togashi was making him do this. Just then, Tashi exclaimed how unbelievable it was. He was shocked that Ashito could see so much on the field. He then asked Ashito if there was anything weird about the football he had played as a kid. He asked Ashito to remember the first time he had touched a football. Ashito then claimed it might not have been weird, but when he and his brother were still kids, they played football inside the store. Togashi then told him to get up and suggested better practice methods. He knew that Ashito also needed to learn defense, so he would do it with him. However, during the practice, he would ask him what he saw. Still, to practice, they needed the numbers, and Togashi decided to kidnap some people. Ashito was left speechless in the dorm's bath. Jun and Takashima were talking about their homework. They had no time to breathe because they had to do both school and work assignments. Suddenly, Togashi opened the nearby window and surprised them. He and Ashito had managed to secure 2 defenders. Meanwhile, Tachibana's sister came over to bring something her brother had forgotten. Yuma discovered the siblings arguing and found them annoying. He then proceeded to get some drinks from the nearby vending machine. However, Togashi appeared and dragged him to the corner. Tachibana's sister told him not to worry since she had driven to the dorm. Tachibana was confused. Just then, Henri appeared with her butler, beaming with a huge smile. Tachibana's sister claimed HRI had come with her because she had asked. HRI then started telling Tachibana that he was able to play football because of their parents and should take care of the people around him, including his sister. Nervous, Tachibana claimed HRI should not go out of her way to help his sister. HRI was fine with it. Tachibana's sister knew HRI was happy to come and see Ashito. Just then, Togashi appeared quietly and instructed Tachibana to join as a forward player. However, they still lacked attackers. HRI wondered what Togashi was planning. He then said it didn't matter who joined since they just needed more players. He told Ashito to come along and asked him to teach Tachibana. Everyone in the area fell silent while Ashito was still in disbelief. Soon after, Fukuda was taking his late-night walk. He stopped when he noticed some people on the nearby practice field. HRI was on the field, kicking the ball like the football coach she wanted to be. Tachibana's sister received the ball and passed it back to HRI. Jun and Takashima began their attack. Ashito felt excited watching everyone in action. He started to stretch his neck from side to side. Togashi noticed him doing this. However, Ashito missed the ball when Tachibana dribbled past him. Togashi sprinted and successfully cleared the ball. Ashito fell to the ground, worrying HRI. Yuma thought it was a close call, but praised Tachibana for getting past Ashito. HRI complained that playing football in the dark was risky and could lead to injuries. Suddenly, Togashi interrupted her and started discussing something with Ashito. Tachibana's sister appreciated the high-level practice, but was concerned that defending was challenging with 2 balls in play. She wondered how defenders managed to cope. Jun and Takashima agreed they could have handled it if they remained focused. However, they noticed something unusual. Ashito had been pondering intensely about how he could recognize the positions of players just by looking at their shadows. Once, he likened his ability to seeing a forest rather than individual trees. Togashi wanted to verify if Ashito could truly remember everyone when he turned his head. Ashito confirmed this and proceeded to place pins on a field board. He also mentioned how he remembered Yuma facing toward the center. Togashi was astonished that Ashito recalled this detail as well. Jun was surprised and questioned if Togashi was serious. HRI could see the shock in Togashi's eyes. Then, Togashi asked Ashito about a previous question regarding playing an unconventional form of football when he was a child. Ashito recounted that when he was 6 years old, he and his brother would spend many nights at their single mother's store with nothing else to do. They would dribble around the store. Togashi was taken aback. Ashito explained that instead of using a real ball, they made one out of newspapers. While playing, they had to dodge customers and tables, which was their version of playing football as kids. Everyone on the field fell silent until HRI spoke up about Iniesta, a player from the Spanish national team who had a similar family background. Togashi was surprised because Iniesta was well known. HRI explained that before Iniesta joined Barcelona's Cantera, he spent time around his family's bar, avoiding drunk customers many times. What one does as a child becomes the foundation for their future as an athlete. Yuma then realized that Togashi wanted to broaden his perspective. Togashi couldn't respond. Yuma was impressed that Togashi had taken the initiative to ask Ashito to teach him. Togashi admitted that he tended to lose awareness of his surroundings when he became emotional. He recognized that Aso's method of staying calm and observing his environment was something that had helped him find his own path. With Ashito nearby, Togashi became curious about what kind of things Ashito saw. While he couldn't emulate Aso's childhood experiences, he aimed to develop similar skills by closely observing and learning from Ashito. He then turned to HRI and apologized. Everyone remained silent, lost in their thoughts. Takashima sensed Togashi's determination. They could see that Togashi was pushing himself hard despite already being in Team A. Jun and Tachibana realized they also needed to take action as they were still stuck in Team B. Watching from a distance, Fukuda simply smiled when they saw their friends who had been promoted to Team B before them. The others suddenly felt motivated. HRI then noticed the change in their atmosphere. At that moment, Ashito acknowledged that he had a broad vision, but questioned why he couldn't apply it to defensive plays. Everyone anxiously looked at Ashito. When he used his vision for offense, he came up with some really innovative ideas. However, he struggled to apply it immediately in impromptu practices like this one. He was already aware that Jun, Takashima, and Togashi were better defenders than him. It was painful for him to realize that his defense wasn't at a premier level. He wanted to perform on that stage again. But first, he needed to understand his weaknesses. It didn't matter to him who it was. He just wanted someone to teach him how to defend. Everyone remained silent until Yuma suggested that the defenders should teach Ashito. Takashima said they could teach him the basics, but they weren't sure where to begin with Ashito. Jun explained that Ashito hadn't learned the fundamental defensive concepts that they were taught in the junior division. Takashima added that defense also involved teamwork, and when explained verbally, it could become theoretical and cumbersome. HRI, for some reason, felt guilty about giving her notes to Ashito. At that moment, someone questioned why they had to endure long explanations. Everyone turned towards the entrance and saw Fukuda approaching. Fukuda acknowledged that while focusing on offense was essential, understanding defense in theory was equally important. Everyone was surprised to see Fukuda. He smiled at Jun and Takashima, pointing out their weaknesses and advising them to broaden their perspectives. Everyone was speechless as Fukuda rummaged through the equipment box. Tachibana's sister was too starstruck to say a word. Togashi asked why Fukuda had come. Fukuda then discovered something and brought out a pair of old football shoes and some ropes. Jun immediately protested his innocence, blaming Togashi for breaking the curfew. Fukuda was impressed that they allowed girls to join as attackers, despite their limited numbers. He announced his intention to join the attackers, surprising everyone. He explained that the gravel field had been used for children's football and proposed a certain practice from a few years prior. He declared that the defenders would practice while holding the rope together with both hands. Everyone was shocked by this unfamiliar training method, but Fukuda simply smiled. The practice began, and the defenders tied themselves together. Even HRI was taken aback. Fukuda instructed them to start the game. HRI passed the ball to Fukuda. Ashito tried to defend, but ended up pulling Togashi and the other defenders along with him. However, Fukuda effortlessly maneuvered past Toito, showcasing his skills. The ball was then passed to Yuma, and Takashima and Togashi dragged Aso with them. Upon observing the situation, Ashito noticed that all defenders had to constantly adjust to keep pace with a lone attacker. Just then, Fukuda received the ball and swiftly bypassed the defenders. Ashito then released the rope. However, everyone's attention was fixed on the ball, sailing towards the goal. Fukuda appeared composed as he watched the ball arc toward the net. Fukuda proceeded to playfully challenge the kid to attempt to block the shot. The players were left speechless. Ashito had seen Fukuda's maneuvers before in Futami, and despite being retired, Fukuda still exhibited impressive ball control. As Ashito began to voice his concerns about Fukuda's training method involving ropes, Fukuda summoned Takashima and instructed him on hip movement and maintaining a deceptive gaze to outwit opponents. He then directed Togashi to closely observe Ashito to enhance his tactical awareness. Next in line was Jun, followed by Takashima, whom he urged to practice defensive strategies with Ashito until they could explain them simply. He then advised Tachibana to improve his inconsistent timing of eye contact. There was no specific advice for Yuma. Ashito implored Fukuda not to overlook him, but Fukuda pointed out that Ashito was the only one who had let go of the rope. Ashito found himself unable to respond. Fukuda then informed the kids that he would regularly take walks in the area on Thursday nights and invited them to join him once a week at the same time. He encouraged them to continue practicing until they mastered the skills. Meanwhile, Numi had claimed that Kuroda was the prime example of a youth club player. Kuroda wondered if this was meant positively or negatively, so he asked Numi for feedback on what he could improve. Numi mentioned it was the first time he had seen Kuroda vulnerable. However, he had a question of his own. He inquired about who among the Asarian members was the least like a youth player. Kuroda promptly identified Ashito, and Numi agreed quickly, but suggested there was another individual who didn't meet his standards. Kuroda had a different perspective. In a brief flashback, the two coaches discussed how Ashito resembled a Kutsu. Fukuda acknowledged the excellence of youth players who were deeply immersed in theory. However, he also noted that relying solely on theory might lead them to give up easily in critical situations. Kuroda was surprised to hear that Fukuda also valued irregularities in the clear flow of youth clubs. Both Ashito and Akutsu were seen as such irregularities, capable of catalyzing chemical reactions within Asperian. Kuroda was taken aback because he had previously told Ashito that he was too bound by theories. He realized he had looked down on Ashito due to his own elitist beliefs without taking the time to reevaluate himself. Next, Numi told Otomo that he had the strongest mental fortitude among the first years. However, Otomo disagreed. Nozomi encouraged him to play with confidence, knowing Otomo possessed the qualities of a captain. This left Otomo speechless. Soon the two returned home to the dorms and noticed others had broken curfew. They were surprised to learn Fukuda had joined them. Takashima felt grateful. Jun was thankful for receiving feedback despite not being in Team A. Otomo felt envious, but dismissed it as overthinking. Suddenly, Kuroda noticed Ashido lost in thought. Togashi then informed Kuroda that they would start night practices the next day due to a shortage of attackers and asked them to join. Despite disliking extra work, Kuroda agreed wholeheartedly. Everyone was shocked at his decision. Otomo then pulled out a map from his bag, revealing escape routes from the entire dormitory. He suggested practicing with a few people first to avoid getting caught breaking curfew. Everyone was impressed and began making plans. Ashido gripped the practice ropes tightly, ready to start. After that, we fast forward to the next game, where we see Ashido screaming at Togashi to just wait a second. However, Togashi says that he is too slow, and after that, Ashido falls right down to the ground. He looks up, angry, and wonders how everyone is able to adapt so fast, and that he is the only one who keeps falling over. He calls them amazing, and that they are all able to plug up spaces instantly and sink. He looks out of breath as he says that he might have said it's a train game. But it's apparent that this rope practice is for those who lack the fundamentals on defense. It's a groundbreaking practice that he is suddenly getting left behind on. However, then it looks like something clicks for him as he looks at Togashi looking around. And just then Kuroda gets behind him and scores. Togashi screams, but then he hears someone saying his name, and it's none other than Ashido. He scratches his head and asks him if it wouldn't have been better if he hadn't turned his neck. Togashi is confused, but Ashido explains that he was in a spot where he could see both the ball holder and the one marking him, telling him that there was no need to excessively turn his neck, or else he would end up losing sight of both. Both of them are quiet after that before Togashi just walks off and says, "Okay." He then sees all of the players talking with each other and training their hearts out, which makes him determined as he grasps hold of the rope and says that he won't lose. He thinks that he doesn't know what effect this rope practice will bring. But Fukuda told him to do it, so he just has to go all out and do it. He then gets up and screams at everyone to go one last time. After that, we get to the next day in school, where the teacher is going on about something unimportant, which, let's be honest, we don't care about. But we then see HRI looking around the room and seeing every one of the players who was up late yesterday. They are all sleeping in class, or everyone except Yuma, I should say, as he is playing his game secretly. After that, we switch scenes and see both Makako and HRI. HRI says that Makako really came, and she says that of course she did. Their practice luckily ended early, and on top of that, today is Thursday, which is the day Coach Fukuda comes to teach, saying that Sue was so excited on the phone. She says that he said that he was only able to join once on the first day, but now they are doing it with Aomo and the rest, and that Sue was determined to do his absolute best. HRI smiles, and then Makako says that if she is lucky, Fukuda might give her some advice as well. After that, we leave them and go right to practice, where Fukuda passes the ball to Otomo, who runs his hardest. He has the ball, and everyone is going against him while being connected with the rope. However, Ashito is a bit behind in carefully analyzing everything that is happening. Kuroda gets the ball, and Fukuda screams at him that he is free, so he passes. Ashido is right on his tail this time as he's right by Fukuda when he gets the ball, but unfortunately, the rope is all the way stretched out, making him unable to take the ball from Fukuda. Then Henri gets the ball and actually manages to score. Ashido screams, and Togashi asks him what he is doing, while Yuma compliments HRI's goal. After that, Takashima tells Ashido that he ran out of rope and that he got drawn out by Fukuda. Even then, Tachibana says that even then his movements were impressive, and that he almost mistook the four of them for line dancers with their synchronicity. Ashito then looks up to Fukuda and says that he ended up tugging on this rope if he wasn't paying attention, so if he doesn't tug it, then he doesn't have time to call out to the others, and that he has to move with the rest of them, or else, saying that this practice really drills that into one's body. He looks fired up as he says that it's really good, and that even if this is just a training game, it really works wonders for Ashido. He then clenches the rope hard and says that it's better than anything theoretical, that the method doesn't matter and that it's the benefit once you drill it into your body. Ashido then continues to try to talk to Fukuda, but he turns around and goes to Togashi. He asks him when going to school through town from the dorms, there are a lot of stores with red signboards, and he asks him just how many there are. Togashi is in shock by this and doesn't know right off the bat. He counts the ones he knows and says that it's 3. Then Fukuda looks over to Ashido and asks him to answer the question. He starts to say every store with a red signboard, which makes everyone's face go into shock. As he then finally says that it's a total of 7, Fukuda smiles and says that it's correct, which everyone thinks is insane. Fukuda then tells Togashi to look around his surroundings more accurately in his day-to-day life. He also hands both Tachibana and Kuroda a note with advice for them individually. Not to mention that he also hands Makako a note on improvements. He then says both Teshima and Ari's names. He tells them that they aren't getting promoted to Team A yet. However, he asks them if they would like to play on the reserve team for Team A's scrimmage tomorrow, and they say yes without any hesitation. Ashito then thinks that they will be able to play on the scrimmage tomorrow with the 4 of them, and that he is looking forward to how well they can play against Team A. After that, Fukuda casually walks off and says that they are done for today. Ashito gets furious and asks him to wait a second as he asks Fukuda where his advice is, but Fukuda says that he doesn't have any in particular. After that, it gets darker, and Ashito is angry. HRI asks him if it wouldn't be good if he stopped drinking carbonated drinks, but Ashito says that he can't settle down unless he drinks, and that their coach is so cold, saying that he looked forward to what he would say this whole week, and then he just shot him down. HRI says that it's true, and that Ashito was enthusiastic this week, and also says that she is sure that he lost weight because he was too enthusiastic. Ashito is shocked by this, but then HRI says that if he would like, she could try to make meals for him from now on. This puts Ashito off guard. We also see that HRI is a bit nervous asking this. However, Ashito says that it would be bad if he were to make the sponsor's daughter go that far for him, and he already has a meal plan Hana made for him, and that he has them all the way to July. This makes HRI a bit sad. But Ashito then starts to just think about Hana and thinks that they haven't met each other since Hana kissed him on his forehead. Makako overhears this and asks if they are talking about Hana. She then tells Ashito that she and Anri saw her with Kurabayashi in the town earlier, which makes Ashito get a stone expression while Makako speaks out loud and says that for them to go out of their way to meet in town, they might be dating. And then Ashito gets a rather funny expression on himself. After that, we go over to the other players who are on the way back, where Kurabayashi comes in front of them and asks them if they are breaking curfew. They are in shock seeing him and ask him what he is doing in their dorm. He explains that there's someone he wants to talk to and asks them where Ashito is. After that, Kurabayashi goes over to Ashito, and this makes everyone go into total awe, as they weren't expecting to see someone like Kurabayashi here. He goes over and asks if Ashito has some time, which leaves Ashito puzzled, wondering what it is. But he doesn't need to wonder for too long, as Kurabayashi says that he will try and give him some advice, and that Hana asked him to. However, as he is sitting right by Kurabayashi, the only thing he can think about is Mako's words about Hana and Kurabayashi dating, which leaves him with a gloomy expression, but gets an intense stare when Kurabayashi just says, "Eh?" And he is unsure how to give advice, which makes him start to scratch his head. So Ashito takes the initiative and says that he doesn't know what this advice thing is all of a sudden, and on top of that, why Hana asked him to. Ashito then just straight up asks Kurabayashi if he knows Hana well. Kurabayashi says that Hana took care of him when they were kids. He then goes into his bag and explains that she is currently helping him out with maintaining his diet, and in exchange for that, she asked him to give Ashito some advice, which shocks Ashito. After that, Kurabayashi hands Ashito a book and explains that it's all of his football notes, and that he can't teach like he thought he would. So instead, Ashito can have that. Aso's eyes look like they are about to pop out of his face, but then, he snaps back and asks him if he weren't writing on this during the Kashiwa match, and asks if this book isn't pretty important to Kurabayashi. However, he looks at Ashito and says that it's fine, and that he remembers everything in it. As the others are eavesdropping on their conversation, Makako wonders what Kurabayashi means with him being unable to teach, but HRI explains that there's no player on his level who can understand what he can teach because of the fact that he is on a totally different stage. Hence, it makes HRI even more curious to what is actually written in that notebook. Ashito is in his own head again and thinks that it's weird that Kurabayashi is giving something this important to someone else, and wonders what Hana did actually say to him, what relationship they have, and also, now that he is thinking about it, he wonders why he's having thoughts like this, thinking that he has a mountain of work to do with football as well. He's supposed to go pro, so why is he having pathetic thoughts like this? Then Kurabayashi gets up and says that he is going home. But before he goes, he explains that he only wrote that to the point that he can understand it, especially the part about tactics, as there aren't many people who he's shown that to who understand it. After that, he is beginning to leave, and as Ashito starts to flip through the notebook, he starts to read Kurabayashi's thoughts and tactics, and it leaves him in awe. He continues to flip through it and envisions Kurabayashi playing as he has, written before. Kurabayashi has fully left. Ashito says his name and asks him if he can really do this. He says that he won't have many chances to talk with him, so he begs him to just tell him one thing. He explains that he wants to go pro, no matter what, and for that purpose, he's been desperately making strides every day. But going pro is obvious for him as he's outstanding. He looks in the notebook and asks what Kurabayashi's goal is in playing football and where he is looking to go. Kurabayashi stops and asks Ashito if he is really playing football to go pro, and he right away screams that he is. Kurabayashi looks back and asks him at this moment who's the best player in the world. For Ashito, this question caught him off guard, and he can't answer. Kurabayashi says that in every era, no matter who, you ask this question to, they'll immediately have an answer, right? And then he drops the bomb by saying that it's who he wants to be. He wants to be the player people think about outright off the bat. His expression is cold while Ashito is in awe, as well as the others. Kurabayashi says that he's decided that this is the moment he chose to dedicate his one life to football, and that he doesn't understand anyone who isn't aiming for the same thing. But at the same time, he says that Ashito was able to understand it from reading in his notebook, which makes him happy. And then after that, he leaves Ashito, who keeps looking in the notebook. After that, we get to the practice match, and Akutsu is looking over the teams, but he is annoyed as he says that this should be their actual match preparation, but asks if there aren't too many first years on the reserve team, saying that this won't be a good enough practice for Premier. Another player behind him says that it seems the first years have been working hard at night and practicing as a group, which shocks Akutsu. We then see the first years changing into their teams and getting ready, but then Akutsu walks over and comments by saying that it will be bad if all of their faces look that tired, and asks if they are taking this scrimmage against them seriously, kind of mocking them. But then, Ashito says that they haven't said anything about being tired. Akutsu asks what the hell the one who looks the most tired is saying, referring to Ashito. But he then walks away and says that he will crush all of them. Oto then tells them to let it go, and that it's as Ashito said. They haven't said anything about being tired, and if the subs aren't strong, the regulars will eventually weaken. They all agree and say that they heard about it from Kuroda as well. Kuroda then explains that it's thanks to Fukuda's words that have motivated them to go this far and says that they can't disappoint him now. Ashito is in his own mind and thinks back to what Kurabayashi said before. He apologizes to the team and asks them to listen to him for a bit. After that, the kickoff begins, and we see Andre looking at the game intensely. The ball gets passed over to Togashi. As the ball is coming over, Togashi turns his head to locate a player to pass to, but just as he did, someone comes and steals away the ball. He says that Togashi is looking away at a weird time, and that they have now lost the ball. However, to his surprise, Ashito and the other guy come before him. This makes him freeze for a bit, which lets Asari come in and try to steal away the ball. However, the other guy passes away the ball, but it was a rather sloppy pass, which let Togashi come in and take it back. He then once again looks around and says that it's not just football, and if you want to widen your vision, you have to train in your daily life too. Even just walking around town is practice and thinking about how many signboards you can see. Fukuda explained to Togashi that the important thing is to remember what you see correctly and make a decision, saying that when you misremember the pharmacy signboard as red, that's just your own convenient assumption and thoughts. Mid-game, like they probably won't shoot from that distance, and his teammate will probably stay here. Fukuda says that it's because Togashi is making those kinds of convenient reads that he ends up making mistakes. Togashi is then back in the game and is looking around extremely accurately. He knows that he has to locate where their pivot foot is pointed, and then he spots it as his teammate is high up on the field. So he makes a perfect long pass to him, which leaves the players in shock. Atmo is a bit in front of him and compliments his pass. After that, we see Koba and Akutsu. Koba tells Akutsu to stay there to defend and that he will cover them. But just then, Kuroda gets active, which gives Koba no choice but to go toward him and mark him. But just then, we see the amazing Atmo run past Akutsu and is totally free. The other guy passes to Atmo, and it's perfect. However, unfortunately, it's offside. The coach says that Kuroda and Atmo are aggressive today, and that it was offside, but that it was a nice attack. Fukuda is looking intensely, and Akutsu goes to the ball and starts the game back again right away. But to his surprise, Kuroda and Atmo don't waste time being frustrated as they run back in the same instant, which Fukuda compliments them. The other team is beginning their attack, but then in Aso's mind, he can clearly see the rope without it even being there, and that gives him the perfect decision-making to try and put himself into the best position possible. The attackers from the other team say that they are moving well, saying that it's like their concentration is perfect and that the first years are moving together at a high level. The other one is amazed at how effective Fukuda's words were. Their teamwork actually works as Togashi and Teshima manage to get away the ball as all of the first years are giving it their all. We get back to a flashback before the game and hear what Ashido told them. He asked them to listen to him for a bit, saying that for a team to be strong, it must have strong subs as well. However, he asked them if they're fine with being subs. He looks determined and says that Fukuda said some really nice words, but they can't just obediently let themselves get moved by it, saying that they just got labeled as subs, and that they have to be frustrated by that as they can't just give in to it. They all listen carefully to Ashito, who says that Kurabayashi taught him what is most important, and tells them all that they have to hold themselves above that. As even though this might just be a scrimmage, they have to crush those guys in. Team A. This makes everyone around get a new perspective as they look fired up, and Ashido thinks to himself that they all have to look higher for them to achieve greatness. Akutsu looks annoyed at Ashido, and his teammate says that the first years in this scrimmage are especially focused, and that they're conscious of their defense too, so they don't get countered. Akutsu says that their concentration will immediately break once they concede a goal and tells him to leave it to Akutsu to handle, as he has a smug look on himself, while on the other hand, Ashito is looking more fired up than ever. And then the game is back on. The other team is starting with the ball, and one of the players sees that Togashi has moved just where he wanted to pass. Ashido, who is in front of him, thinks that what he gained most out of that rope practice is moving without needing to be told. If his positioning is wrong, he will get pulled and fall over, as they have done countless times, saying that the fundamentals of defense that Togashi, Takashima, and Asari have been forcibly drilled into his body. Another one gets the ball and says that the first years have a different look in their eyes and says that it's interesting. After that, Isima looks at Ashido, and because of that, Ashido says that they don't have to say anything to each other anymore, as just by that look, he understands where they want him to be. And it actually works as Ashido comes just in time to intercept the pass perfectly, thinking that what connected the four of them was just rope at the end of the day. However, he understood it with something tangible, which is that they all have a rope that allows them to cover for each other without words. It's a rope that binds them together for a defensive unit. This is trust, and it's something that Ashido has finally understood. Fukuda looks proud, but then Ashido looks like he is being hit by a train, but it turns out that it was just Akutsu who forced his whole body into Ashido to take the ball. Atmo is in shock that Akutsu is moving up even in a scrimmage like this. Akutsu says that it's a shame, and that there's no way that they can stop the real Team A. But before he can finish his sentence, he realizes something, which is that even though Ashito is laying on the ground, he's refusing to let go of the ball. Ashito is trying his hardest to keep the ball by his feet, and he remembers Kurabayashi's words as he asked Ashido if he was playing football to go pro. Ashido says that it's right, and that he has played up until now for that purpose, and that once he gets a contract with the Hispanic senior team, he can send money to his mother. But does his goal really end there? Before he can think any longer, Akutsu has managed to get the ball from Ashito and is telling the forward to let's go. But just then, Togashi comes and tries to tackle away the ball from Akutsu. Togashi's interception makes the ball go a bit to the right of Akutsu, but he still tries to get it back. But that's when the goat Ashido comes back and clears away the ball, or that's what they thought. Unfortunately, Yuma was there and got the ball right to his feet and managed to score an actually insane goal out of the penalty area. All of the first years are pissed by this, and they look furious as Ashido screams not yet, and that they will stop the next one and the one after that. His words turn the players' anger into determination as they get hyped again. Ashido thinks that he wants to go pro, but people whose goal ends there will never become pro. He says that his resolve is still lacking, and that worrying about something so worthless is the biggest proof of that, referring to Hana. Anyway, after that, the first years are once again ready for the match to restart, and this makes Yoshitsune start to smile a bit. Fukuda, over on the bench, also comments and says that it starts here and that next is just the practice volume, telling them all to show them what they've got. After that, we actually fast forward a whole 2 months, and we see the Esperion team dominating like always. However, we also see the Kashiwa team looking destroyed, and they are all out of breath as they have just lost 3-0 against Aomori-san, who are walking off casually. We then get a close-up panel of the number 10 player on the Aomori-san team. After that, we see the Premier League table after match week 12, where Aomori-san is in the lead, then Esperion, and then Funabashi. After that, the text says that for this time's U8 national team matches in the Czech Republic, they are losing 4 players for 2 weeks from their main team. One coach looks at Fukuda and says that it's great that they were selected, but youth teams have a tiny pool of players compared to high schools, and that they can't plug their absence. We see that Fukuda is thinking hard while the other coach continues and says that the next match is against the Tokyo Vans and it's Omiya. After that, he continues and says that they definitely won't have these 4 for those matches and says that their team is the most handicapped by this situation. After that, we get to the gym, where everyone is training hard. Someone says that the coaches are fighting in the room, and someone says that it's understandably so, as even though they won club youth, the regulars were used for all matches during summer, so fatigue is bad. Someone says that the 4 are probably Yoshitsune, Yamada, Takasugi, and Kiriki, like usually. Another one says that Shimura's leg is pretty bad and that Tara hasn't recovered either. And then we see Kiriki, who's just chilling and listening to music. Someone asks about Kurabayashi, but another one explains that he's under the U20, so this match has nothing to do with him, but says that he might play in these next 3 upcoming matches with the Asarian club here in Japan. Another says that there's a rather big gap between the regulars and the reserves, and some of them blame it on both Kiriki and Akutsu, calling them indifferent. This gets their attention, and someone tells them that they haven't been able to raise the reserves level, and that it's their responsibility. Kiriki looks annoyed as he takes out his headphones and says that he won't say that he doesn't care. However, he doesn't get what the other guy means that it's their responsibility, and that no matter how you look at it, isn't it their responsibility to improve? Which leaves them a bit taken off guard. Akutsu then adds in by saying that he was so moved by Takasugi's words and says that because Esperion is the strongest team, therefore the whole team should be strong, right? Then with a cocky expression, he apologizes for being too excellent and says that he has other concerns in mind. Takasugi gets mad as he hears this and says that they are all counting on Akutsu while they are in the Czech Republic, especially if Kurabayashi is gone too. Akutsu gets a bit mad after that, but he continues and says that he is too harsh on them and that he should think of how to bring the team together at a time like this. He then turns to Kiriki and says that he should also give them advice before they depart. Akutsu then gets a smug expression as he says that it's pointless, and that Kiriki has his hands full thinking about how the Czech call-up will go, which shocks Kiriki. Akutsu then explains that without Kurabayashi, he's the playmaker for both teams, then saying that Kiriki is probably looking forward to those international matches more. Kiriki doesn't pay him much mind and puts in his headphones instead, but just then Uda opens up the door. He says that they are late, but that they are announcing who they are calling up for the national team. He starts off by saying Yoshitsune, Yamada, Takasugi, and then lastly, he actually doesn't say Kiriki, but instead he says Akutsu. Akutsu gets super fired up and flies up from his seat. Meanwhile, Kiriki looks crushed. Everyone can't believe it, as they are watching the hyped-up Akutsu. Fukuda congratulates him and says that the 4 will make it back in time for the Funabashi match, and that it will be rough, but that he needs them to play. But he says that they will definitely be out for both the Tokyo Vans and Omiya match, so they should start to focus on them and pulls out the board showing the players who will play in those matches. But something caught everyone's eyes, and it's the fact that the defensive line is all first years. Fukuda then says Kiriki's name and says that he will be working with the team as the playmaker. But Kiriki doesn't respond, as he is still left, just amazed that he didn't get into the team. and Fukuda even asks him if he's even listening, which he doesn't get a response to. And Yoshitsune instead breaks the silence by rushing over to Akutsu and congratulating him while the other players are amazed that Kiriki got dropped. The coach then says his name and is going to explain the reason why he was dropped. He says that they confirmed it by watching the club matches over the summer, and he is suffering from fatigue from having played all those matches. But on top of that, he's also mentally drained. They didn't call him up out of concern, and that now Kiriki can just focus on the club. Kiriki still looks like he has seen a ghost, and the coach thinks to himself that it's lip service as Akutsu, who was chosen in his place, also played in all of those matches. But then Fukuda speaks up and says that losing 4 starters hurts. But this is a chance for the reserves to make an appeal. The defensive line will be formed by first years, and Asari and Tashima are being promoted to Team A, Tachibana as well, saying that there will be many first years sitting on the bench alongside Shimura, who is recovering. One of the players asks about Kurabayashi, but Fukuda explains that he talked with Coach Gwaruja, and the promise was 2 months, so he's going back. But it's been extended until the Funabashi match, and that's the only match he is playing in. But after that, he is going back. The other coach says that he understands that they all are worried, but that they have to go through 2 premier matches against Tokyo Vans and Omiya with inexperienced first years. But the veterans Kiriki and Kobayakawa are the keys, also saying that they are counting on Kiriki as a playmaker. But Kiriki is still too stunned to speak, so instead, someone else asks if this isn't the reason why it's Akutsu, who says both Kiriki and Takasugi's name, and says that both of them were under the assumption that they would be called up before they were, and even told Akutsu that they were counting on him. While they leave, he gets a smug expression, and says that it's exactly why someone who they thought beneath them was able to exceed them. The coach tells him to stop now, and that there's no one above or beneath anyone who was called up, but says that the Tokyo Vans match is soon and that they are still counting on Kiriki. He's about to say that winning 1 point is still a good result, but then Fukuda cuts him off and tells them to go and win 3 points. He points at Kiriki and says that this is an order as the manager, and to bring this inexperienced team together, and he also must lead them to victory, saying that if he can't make them win, then he won't be using him for a while, which the other coach thinks is insane. But Kiriki still is just quiet. After that, we shift to Ashido and the others, and they are congratulating Tachibana, Teshima, and Asari on their move up to Team A. Otmo says that for these past 2 months, he had been nervous about how no one was getting promoted or getting dropped back down. But who would have thought that the first years would increase? After they teased Tachibana a bit, as he was close to catching up to Kan as the top scorer, and said that it would probably have been better if he turned down the promotion. After that, they get serious, and someone tells them good luck, and that they should appeal to Coach Fukuda, so more first years get used. After that, as everyone is celebrating, Masuko says that he's going home. He explains that with this, both the selection and scouted players are all in Team A, and that the uselessness of the graduates is getting highlighted. He explains further and says that this night practice is also a wonder for him as he's come a bunch since he's been invited, but is it really useful? They are already exhausted after practice during summer, and this ground at night is honestly dangerous too, as it feels like they are just adding to their fatigue. However, Takashima says that Coach Fukuda comes to teach on Thursday, though Masuko says that he will just come on Thursdays then, and says that he will finally be able to play in matches for Team B now and that he can't get injured, and then he leaves. Yuma by the side says that they can't do anything about the difference in temperament and that the season is already more than enough, as their standpoints are diverging as well. After that, Keiko says that she heard that Ashito and the rest were doing individual practice here, so she's been coming to watch for a few weeks now, and asks why Yuma hasn't joined them. He says that he did once but switched out after Ran, and the rest started coming and saying that watching is enough for him, as the youth players are fun to watch. HRI then adds in by saying that Ashito is special and that he is working extremely hard. Yuma agrees and says that for these 2 months, he's worked the hardest and that without a doubt, he should be the most tired. But even then, Yuma says that he's also gained the most out of these night practices, and when there's a wall in front of him, he comes at it straight, saying that if it were him, Ashito could probably loosen up more. And because of that, He's looking forward to when he can show the results of his training in the Premier League. After that, we see Ashito with a big and bright smile on him as he says that he doesn't know who will be playing for the Tokyo Vans match, but his preparation is perfect, and with that tells them all to, let's go. After that, we get to a parking lot, and we see both Kurabayashi and Kiriki walking. Kiriki is looking extremely gloomy, and as Kurabayashi walks past him, he says that so even someone like Kiriki can make that kind of expression, referring to his let-down face and demeanor as Kurabayashi has walked away. Kiriki slams his fist into the wall, being extremely pissed off. The next day, we see the first years having a shocked expression as they say the lineup for this weekend's match against the Tokyo Vans. Fukuda says that they might be missing strikers, but to not think of this as a filler match. There's no need to distinguish this match from the other ones, ending it by telling them all to go and get 3 points and that Kiki will be the captain, which leaves Aso's face somewhat stunned. After that, Tachibana comes by and takes off his practice shirt, telling Ashido that he won't need it now as he is a starter, and he wishes him good luck. We also see Togashi, Takashi, and Asari getting pumped and ready to show off their new and improved defensive line. But as everyone is beginning to walk home for the day, we see that Ashito is left just looking at his name on the starting board, while having what I would call a relief facial expression. The text then says that every club situation is different, but for J-League youth, September is a time of turning points, similar to the time of retirement in high school football. Before the club youth Zukan is held, players who have no hope of earning a pro contract are told of their situation directly, without a chance of getting a contract. There are those who focus on university entrance exams. In Asaran, 4 people have decided to retire this year, and they started to embark on life after football. After that, we leave the text and see that the night has arrived. The first years say that they can't do night practice for a while now, and that when they finally have this chance, they have to be in perfect condition for the match. Some of the players are a bit let down by this, which is understandable, but then Yuma says that he understands that Togashi, who moves at his own pace, already left but wonders where Ashito is. Atmo explains that Ashido said that he can't cool down since they are not doing night practice, and that he tried to stop him. We also see HRI, who looks worried for him. Atmo screams at him, telling him that he is a starter now, and that he has to stop. Keiko compliments his amazing stamina and says that since he is from Ehime, he is trying to be like Nagatomo. Henri then says that even Nagatomo cools down by not running for a few weeks, as she continues to look worried. Ashito continues to run, but out of nowhere, he starts to leave the grounds. He explains that the time they are allowed to use the grounds is over and that he will just run a bit more outside, telling them all that they should go home. Kiko notes that he's happy about being chosen as a starter, but he's a kid who can't hold in his emotions. After that, we get into Ashido's head as he is running, and he is screaming match over and over. He can finally play on the Premier League stage again. He looks ecstatic as he tells himself over and over again to win. But as he is running, he notices someone before him, and it's none other than Hana, who's standing with a bike in her hand. He looks shocked when he sees her, but suddenly she tells him to stop, and he tries his best to stop himself from running. Ashido looks like he's just seen a ghost, but Hana tells him to stop running and to go home already, saying that she was by the bike rack, but Ashido wasn't coming, no matter how long she waited. She hands him his bike, and says that she got it for him, and tells him with a determined tone to go home. They look at each other, but they both get embarrassed, and Hana looks away. Ashido asks why she is here all of a sudden, and she says that there is something she has for him. But just then, Ashido starts to remember the kiss Hana gave him on his forehead, and also the people who asked if she and Kurabayashi were dating. It looks like he gets a bit angry as he says that he's a starter for this weekend's match and screams at Hana, asking her why she decided to show up now. Hana is shocked, and Ashido right away takes his hand before his mouth, realizing his mistake. Hana gets a really sad expression as she, with lost eyes, looks at Ashito and apologizes. We then get into a flashback to Hana talking with Aso's mother. His mother apologizes for having Hana do so much for her, but that she thought that she would call and check up on how Ashito is doing. She explains that she thought about coming to watch his match and asks if he will be playing in the Funabashi match. But she also asks if it would be better for him to not see her yet, explaining that even when she tried to call him at his dorm, he told her that he didn't want calls, and because of that, she naturally wants to talk with him in person. For a bit, Hana looks a bit lost and says that it's the same for her, and that it's better for Hana not to meet him, thinking back to the kiss and Ashito and HRI's interactions. His mother gets angry and asks Hana what's wrong, and if Ashito did something to her. She looks sad, but explains that she just thinks that someone like her, who knows nothing about football, just disturbs and troubles him, saying that he has to focus on football and that she doesn't want to get in his way. His mom then says that there's absolutely no way that she would be in his way, and even begs Hana not to think like that. After that, we have just gotten back to when Ashito screamed at Hana. She just thinks, "Yikes," to herself before she apologized, with a bittersweet expression. It gets quiet before Ashito asks what she had for him. She then pulls out another set of meal prep for Ashito for the upcoming months. Ashito tries to ask if this is the same one as Kurabayashi has, but he then takes his hand before his mouth and says that it's nothing. But Hana asks what he meant, and he then just asks her if they had the same. She laughs and says that their physiques and preferences are different, so she thought about those properly when she made it. She has a smile on her face as she said it, but Ashito just looks confused. Hana sees this and also looks confused before she starts to look sad. They just stand there for a while before Hana says that she will go home now. Ashito hears this and wakes back to life and looks up. Hana has what I would call a fake smile on her, as she says that she said sorry and that she will go home. So Ashito doesn't need to make that face anymore. She's beginning to go and tells him to give her meal plan a proper look, telling him good luck with football and that she is truly rooting for him as she is walking away. Ashito screams, "Hana!" She stops and looks back, and then Ashito asks her why she kissed him that day. Hana once again gets a sad and lost expression as she doesn't know what to say, and instead, she screams and apologizes as she runs away from him. She looks extremely sad while running away, but that's when she spots HRI a bit away, and they walk to each other. Hana says her name with a confused tone, and HRI just asks her if she talked with Ashito. Hana says that she did, and then HRI just straight away asks her what her relationship is with Kurabayashi. Hana is taken aback by this question, and is shocked before saying that she just makes meal plans for him. And in return, he gives her the results of his monthly blood test. And with those values, Hana is able to learn how practice load and diet affects a J1 player's condition. HRI then asks if the two of them meet often. Hana says that they don't, and that for those details, they just meet in the office. But she then remembers that they once met by the station so that she could thank him properly. HRI is quiet before she tells Hana that Ashito will be a starter for the Premier League match this week and tells her to please let Ashito concentrate. Because when Hana shows up, she messes up Aso's form. Hana is confused by this, but she then smiles with once again a fake smile and walks past HRI without saying anything as she is left. We see that HRI is left and has an extremely sad expression on herself. And that's where I'll leave off. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for my sports content like this. Have a great rest of your day. Till next time.